The notification ping from Selah's iPad cut through the silence of our bedroom like a knife through butter. 3:15 in the morning, and my wife was supposedly at her take cow quote celebration, the last hurrah before our wedding next month. I rolled over, squinting at the glowing screen she'd left charging on her nightstand. Location shared, 1247 Elm Street. I knew that address. Everyone in this college town knew that address. The notorious party house where undergrads went to make mistakes they'd regret for the rest of their lives. What the hell was my 31-year-old fiancée doing there? My name's Dean Callix, and I'm what you might call a professional skeptic. 5 years as a contractor in this town taught me to read between the lines, spot the rotten wood beneath fresh paint, and trust my gut when something doesn't add up. Right now, my gut was screaming. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. The drive to Elm Street took 12 minutes through empty streets lined with Victorian houses that had seen better decades. The party house sat at the end of the block like a festering wound, music thumping, windows glowing, college kids stumbling across the lawn in various states of intoxication. I pushed through the crowd, scanning faces for Selah's distinctive auburn hair. The air reeked of cheap drinks and poor decisions. Students pressed against me, shouting over the music, but I kept moving deeper into the house. That's when I found her. Selah was in the living room, pressed between two guys who couldn't have been older than 22. Her designer dress, the one I'd bought her for our anniversary, was hiked up around her thighs as she ground against them like she was auditioning for a music video. Her friends Mira and Ray stood nearby, filming everything on their phones and laughing. The room went quiet when I stepped forward. Not completely silent, the music still pounded, but quiet enough that I could hear my own breathing. Selah. She turned, and for a split second, I saw something I'd never seen in her eyes before. Genuine fear. Then it was gone, replaced by that practiced smile she used on difficult clients. Quote. 3. I stepped closer, and the two college kids backed away like I was radioactive. 4. Her face flushed, but she lifted her chin in that defiant way that used to turn me on. Now it just made me tired. I reached for her arm, not rough but firm. She tried to pull away, but I was done playing games. 7. The walk to my truck felt exhausting. Selah stumbled beside me, her heels clicking on the pavement, while her friends followed in a loose cluster. Mira kept trying to step between us, rambling about girls needing to unwind, but I ignored her. It was Ray who stopped me just as I reached my truck. Oat. She pressed something into my hand, a USB drive. Her expression was strange, almost apologetic. 9. I stared at the small device, then at Ray's face. Behind her, Mira was frantically shaking her head. What's on it? Just watch it when you get home. You deserve to know the truth. The drive back was silent except for Selah's occasional hiccups and muttered complaints about me embarrassing her. I kept the USB clutched in my right hand, my knuckles white against the steering wheel. Back home, I helped Selah inside and deposited her on the couch. She immediately started the waterworks. Tears, apologies, the whole performance. But I wasn't watching her anymore. I was looking at that USB drive. I'm going to make some coffee, I said. Instead, I went to my office and plugged the drive into my laptop. The video file was time-stamped from 2 hours earlier. The bedroom was dimly lit, but there was no mistaking what I was watching. Selah, my fiancée, the woman I'd planned to spend my life with, was in that bed with two men. Not just the guys from the living room, different ones. The audio was crystal clear, and so were her moans of pleasure. I sat back in my chair, strangely calm. The rage would come later, I knew, but right now I felt nothing but cold, calculating clarity. I was done being the nice guy. The next hour passed in a blur of methodical action. I packed Selah's belongings into garbage bags, all of them. Her clothes, her toiletries, her law books, everything. While she passed out on the couch, I accessed our joint email account and sent cancellation notices to the wedding venue, the caterer, the photographer, everyone. Then I did something that would have been unthinkable just hours earlier. I extracted a 5-second clip from the video. Nothing explicit, just enough to show Selah clearly with another man, and posted it to social media with a simple caption. The wedding is off. I tagged her parents, her boss, her law school friends, everyone who mattered in her carefully constructed world. By the time Selah woke up the next morning, her phone was buzzing like an angry wasp. She grabbed it, squinting at the screen, and I watched her face transform from confusion to horror to pure fury. "What did you do?" she whispered. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I was sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee and scrolling through the responses to my post. Her mother had already called 3 times. I told the truth, I said without looking up. Funny how liberating that can be. She lunged for me then, all claws and rage, but I caught her wrists easily. For a moment, we stayed frozen like that, her breathing hard, me perfectly calm. "You bastard," she hissed. "You have no idea what you've done." I smiled then, and I could see it unsettled her. "Actually, sweetheart, I know exactly what I've done. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" The morning after I nuked Selah's reputation from orbit, she tried to mount a counterattack. I had to admire her strategy, even as I prepared to crush it. She'd called in reinforcements. Mira arrived at 7 a.m. with coffee and a game plan. I listened from the kitchen as they huddled in the living room, voices low but urgent. "We spin this," Mira was saying. "You were drugged. Someone spiked your drinks. You weren't in control of your actions. But the video shows you as a victim. Dean posting it makes him look vindictive, not sympathetic." I had to hand it to Mira. She was devious. If lying was an Olympic sport, she'd bring home gold. Too bad for her that I'd already thought 3 moves ahead. Selah emerged from her war council looking composed, her lawyer mask firmly in place. She'd changed into her power suit, navy blue, tailored to perfection, and swept her hair into that severe bun she wore to court. Quote 24. Quote 25. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, her hands folded like she was negotiating a settlement. Quote 26. I nodded thoughtfully. Quote 27. Her jaw tightened. Quote 28. Quote 29. She leaned forward, and I caught a whiff of her perfume, the expensive stuff I'd bought her for Christmas. "Take it down, Dean. We can work through this. Couples therapy, whatever you want, but take it down." "No." The word hung between us like a blade. Selah's composure cracked just slightly. Quote 32. She said, standing. Quote 33. After she left for work, I made my own preparations. The full video from Ray's USB drive was my nuclear option, but I had conventional weapons to deploy first. I printed out several still frames from the video. Nothing explicit, but clearly showing Selah in compromising positions with multiple partners. Then I drove to her law firm. Hartwell, Kessler, and Associates occupied the top 3 floors of the nicest building downtown. I'd done some renovation work there 2 years ago, which meant I knew the layout and had a nodding acquaintance with the receptionist. Quote 34. Jenny smiled as I approached her desk. Quote 35. Quote 36. Jenny's expression shifted to concern. "Is everything okay?" "I hope so. Is he available?" 5 minutes later, I was sitting across from Richard Hartwell, senior partner and Selah's direct supervisor. He was a thin, precise man in his 60s who'd built his reputation on discretion and old-fashioned values. What can I do for you, Dean?" I slid the envelope across his desk. "I'm afraid there's been a situation with Selah. Given that she's up for partner this year, I thought you should be aware." Hartwell opened the envelope and examined the photos. I watched his face drain of color. "When were these taken?" "Last night, at a college party. There's video as well, but I thought these would suffice to convey the nature of the situation." He set the photos down carefully, as if they might explode. "This is very troubling, Dean. Very troubling indeed. We have a morality clause in our partnership agreements." "I understand. I'm not trying to ruin her career, Mr. Hartwell. I just thought you should know what you're dealing with." After leaving the law firm, I drove to Rusty's bar. The Anchor was the kind of place where contractors, cops, and other working folks gathered to complain about their lives over cheap drinks. My friend Rusty Kowalski had bought it after retiring from the police force, and it served as the unofficial gossip hub for anyone who mattered in the blue-collar community. Quote 45. Rusty looked up from wiping down glasses. Quote 46. Word traveled fast in a small town. I slid onto a bar stool and accepted the coffee he offered. Quote 47. Quote 48, he said, nodding toward his head bartender. My cousin Letitia had worked at the Anchor for 3 years and knew every piece of dirt in a 10-mile radius. Quote 49. Quote 50. Rusty raised an eyebrow. Quote 51. Hutundum. I pulled out my phone and checked. He was right. The post had vanished, but the screenshot notifications told me it had been shared dozens of times before disappearing. Quote 52. I said. Quote 53. Quote 54. Before I could answer, Letitia appeared at my elbow. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper tongue. Quote 55. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. Quote 56. Quote 57. Letitia grinned. Quote 58. I felt a cold smile spread across my face. Quote 59. Quote 60. Quote 61. I finished my coffee and stood. Quote 62. My phone buzzed as I headed for the door. Text message from an unknown number. You'll want to come by the bar tonight. Evan's here, running his mouth about your wife. Thought you should know. L. I checked the time. 6 p.m. Selah would be getting home soon, probably expecting to find me ready to apologize and beg forgiveness. Instead, she'd find an empty house and a note explaining that I was out handling some business. Time to have a conversation with Mr. Evan Crawl. The Anchor was packed when I arrived at 8 p.m. College students mixed with locals, creating the kind of volatile atmosphere that usually ended with someone getting thrown out. I spotted Evan immediately. He was holding court at a corner table, surrounded by younger guys who hung on his every word. He was everything I'd expected. Tall, athletic, with the kind of easy confidence that came from never facing real consequences. His blonde hair was perfectly tousled, his clothes expensive but casual. The type of guy who'd never worked a day of manual labor in his life. I ordered a drink and settled in to listen. Wasn't even a challenge, Evan was saying, gesturing with his craft drink. Married women are the easiest targets. They're bored, neglected, desperate for attention. You just have to know which buttons to push. His audience laughed appreciatively. One of them, a kid who couldn't have been 21, leaned forward eagerly. Quote 65. Evan's grin was pure predator. Most husbands are clueless. They're so wrapped up in their own little worlds, their jobs, their hobbies, their routines. They never see it coming. And even when they do find out, what are they going to do? Fight me? He flexed his shoulders. I work out 6 days a week. These middle-aged guys can barely climb a flight of stairs. I took a long sip of my drink and stood up. The conversation died as I approached their table. Evan looked up, and I watched recognition dawn on his face. His confident smile faltered slightly. Gentlemen, I said pleasantly, mind if I join you? I couldn't help overhearing your fascinating discussion about marital infidelity. The younger guys exchanged nervous glances. One of them started to stand, but I waved him back down. Please don't leave on my account. This is educational. I pulled out my phone and set it on the table, screen up. Evan, isn't it? I'm Dean Callix. I believe you know my wife. Evan's face had gone pale, but he was trying to maintain his composure. Quote 72, quote 73. I swiped to the video file and hit play. The audio was clear enough that everyone at the table could hear Selah moaning Evan's name. Because she certainly seems to know you. The younger guys scrambled away from the table like it was on fire. Evan lunged for my phone, but I was faster, snatching it back and standing up. Relax, hero. That was just a preview. The full director's cut is much more comprehensive. You can't show that to people. It's illegal. I laughed. You know, that's exactly what Selah said. But here's the thing about the law. It's surprisingly specific. Revenge adult material laws require the distribution of explicit imagery without consent. But this? I waved my phone. This is just evidence of adultery. Perfectly legal to share with interested parties. Evan stood up, trying to use his height advantage to intimidate me. What do you want? I want you to understand something very clearly. I stepped closer, and despite his size advantage, he took a step back. You made a mistake when you chose my wife. You assumed I was just another clueless husband who'd roll over and take it, but I'm not. Look, man, I didn't know she was married. She was wearing her engagement ring in the video, Evan. Try again. He had no answer for that. I could see the wheels turning in his head, probably calculating whether he could take me in a fight. I saved him the trouble. I'm not here to fight you, I said. I'm here to offer you a choice. You can disappear from Selah's life quietly, and this stays between us, or you can keep playing games, and I'll make sure every faculty member, every department head, and every student on campus sees exactly what kind of man you really are. You're threatening me. I'm offering you a business proposition. I'm a contractor, Evan. I know how to solve problems efficiently. I pulled a business card from my wallet and set it on the table. That's my number. Call me when you've made your decision. But don't take too long. I'm not a patient man. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Evan? Next time you want to brag about your conquests, you might want to check who's listening. Small town, big ears. Outside, I sat in my truck for a few minutes, letting my heart rate settle. The confrontation had gone better than expected. Evan was a coward underneath all that muscle and bravado. But I knew this was just the opening move. Selah wouldn't go down without a fight, and neither would her support network. My phone buzzed. Text from Letitia. Nice work in there. Half the bar heard that conversation. Word's going to spread fast. I smiled and started the engine. Let it spread. The more people who knew the truth, the harder it would be for Selah to control the narrative. But as I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something. Selah was too smart to go down this easily, and her friends were too invested in her success to abandon her without a fight. The real war was just beginning. I woke up to the sound of someone pounding on my front door. The clock read 6:30 a.m., and through the window I could see Selah standing on my porch, still in yesterday's clothes, her hair wild and her makeup smeared. I took my time getting dressed before answering. When I finally opened the door, she pushed past me without invitation. We need to talk. Now. Good morning to you too, sweetheart. Coffee? Don't. Her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. Don't you dare act casual about this. Do you have any idea what you've done? I settled into my favorite chair and studied her. She looked like she hadn't slept, and there was a manic energy in her movements that I'd never seen before. I assume this is about my conversation with Evan last night? He called me at midnight, terrified. Said you threatened to ruin his academic career. I offered him a choice. There's a difference. She started pacing, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. This has gone far enough, Dean. I made a mistake. Multiple mistakes. With multiple men. On camera. And I'm willing to make amends. But if you keep pushing this, you're going to force me to take legal action. I leaned back in my chair. What kind of legal action? Harassment. Stalking. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. I've already spoken to my colleagues about filing a restraining order. Based on what evidence? Based on you showing up at my workplace, confronting my friend at a public bar, and distributing intimate materials without consent. I had to admit, it sounded convincing when she put it that way. If I were a judge hearing her side of the story, I might be sympathetic too. There's just one problem with your strategy, I said. What's that? I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recording app. The red dot indicated it had been running since she walked in. You just admitted to having intimate materials created with another man while we were engaged. That's adultery, Selah. And in this state, adultery affects divorce settlements. Her face went white. You're recording me? This is my house. I have every right to record conversations that take place here. She lunged for my phone, but I was ready for her. I stood and backed away, keeping the device out of reach. Delete that. No. Dean, I'm warning you. You're warning me? I laughed. Sweetheart, you're in no position to warn anyone about anything. You want to play legal games? Fine. But remember, I'm not the one who committed adultery on camera. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her calculating. Finally, she straightened her shoulders and put on her lawyer face. This isn't over. No, I agreed. It's not. After she left, I sat down at my computer and started researching. If Selah wanted to escalate this to a legal battle, I needed to understand exactly what weapons she had at her disposal. 3 hours later, my doorbell rang again. This time, it was my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Harker. She was a tiny woman in her 70s who spent most of her time tending her garden and keeping track of neighborhood gossip. Dean, dear, I hope you don't mind me stopping by. Not at all, Mrs. Harker. What can I do for you? She glanced around nervously, then pulled a manila envelope from her purse. I wasn't sure if I should get involved, but, well, I think you should see these. Inside the envelope were photographs, dozens of them, taken with a telephoto lens from her upstairs window. They showed Selah and Evan meeting at various locations around town over the past 2 months. Coffee shops, restaurants, his apartment building. I'm not usually one to spy on the neighbors, Mrs. Harker said, wringing her hands. But when I saw that young man coming and going at odd hours while you were at work, well, I thought something wasn't right. I studied the photos. They were time-stamped and clearly showed Selah's face. In several of them, she and Evan were kissing or holding hands. Quote 122. Quote 123. She patted my arm. Quote 124. After she left, I spread the photos across my kitchen table and started planning my next move. The pictures proved that Selah's relationship with Evan wasn't a drunken mistake. It was an ongoing affair that had been happening for months. My phone rang. Letitia's name appeared on the screen. Dean, you need to get down here right now. What's wrong? Selah's here with her girlfriends. They're trying to do damage control, but it's not going well. Mira just got into a screaming match with 3 different people, and Ray's been recording everything. I'll be right there. The anchor was buzzing with tension when I arrived. Selah sat at a corner table with Mira and Jules, her law firm colleague. All 3 women looked like they were under siege. I ordered a drink and found a spot at the bar where I could observe without being obvious. Letitia sidled over, pretending to wipe down glasses. They've been here for an hour, she whispered, trying to convince people that you're the bad guy. Problem is, nobody's buying it. As if to prove her point, I watched a middle-aged woman approach Selah's table. I recognized her, Nancy Chen, who worked in the college administration office. Quote, 31-1. Nancy said loudly enough for half the bar to hear. Quote, 32. Selah's face flushed red. That's a private matter. Not anymore, it isn't. My daughter goes to school here and she says everyone's talking about it. Says you were with multiple students at a party? Mira stood up, trying to intercede. There's been a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, Nancy said, is how a grown woman thinks it's appropriate to prey on college boys young enough to be her son. The confrontation was drawing attention from across the bar. I saw people pulling out their phones, ready to record whatever happened next. That's when Jules made a critical error. She stood up and pointed directly at me. Quote 138. The bar went quiet. Every eye turned to me, and I felt the weight of their judgment. But instead of hostility, I saw something else in their faces. Curiosity. I stood up slowly and walked over to their table. Quote 139. I said pleasantly. Quote 140. Quote 141. I pulled out my phone and opened the photo gallery. Quote 142. I held up the phone so everyone nearby could see the photos of Selah and Evan together. A murmur ran through the crowd. Quote 143. I swiped to the clip from the party. Quote 144. Selah grabbed for my phone, but I pulled it back. Quote 145. Quote 146. She hissed. Quote 147. Wink on quote 148. I said calmly. Quote 149. The crowd was fully engaged now, phones out, recording everything. I could see the calculation in Selah's eyes. She knew this was going viral within minutes. Come on, she said to her friends, we're leaving. But as they tried to push through the crowd, I heard Ray's voice, clear and carrying. Crowd, quote, 152. Documentary? Selah spun around, her face white with shock. Quote, I'm 153. But it was too late. The damage was done, and everyone in the bar had heard. I looked at Ray with new understanding. She wasn't just Selah's friend, she was documenting everything for some other purpose. As the 3 women hurried out of the bar, I realized that Selah's support network wasn't as solid as she thought. Cracks were starting to show, and I intended to drive a wedge right through them. The text message came at midnight. Meet me at the Riverside Hotel tomorrow at 8 p.m. Come alone. We need to end this. I stared at my phone, considering. The Riverside Hotel had been abandoned for 15 years, a decaying monument to the town's more prosperous past. It sat on the edge of the river like a rotting tooth, its windows boarded up and its parking lot cracked with weeds. It was exactly the kind of place someone might choose for a private conversation, or an ambush. I spent the next day making preparations. If Selah wanted to meet somewhere isolated, I'd make sure I had backup. I called Rusty and explained the situation. Quote 154, Sue? He asked. Quote 155. Thakran, quote 156. Quote 157. Quote 158. I also made sure to charge my phone fully and test the recording app. Whatever Selah had planned, I wanted it documented. The Riverside Hotel looked even more ominous in the evening light. Its Gothic architecture cast long shadows across the cracked parking lot, and the boarded windows gave it the appearance of a skull. I parked near the main entrance and checked my phone, 7:58 p.m. Selah's car was already there, parked in the shadows near the side entrance. I could see a figure moving around inside the building, a flashlight beam dancing through the broken windows. I grabbed my own flashlight and headed inside. The lobby was a disaster zone of water damage and decay. The once elegant carpet squelched under my feet, and the air smelled of mold and abandonment. My flashlight beam picked out the remains of furniture covered in dust sheets, like ghosts. Selah? Up here. Her voice echoed from the stairwell. Second floor, room 237. I climbed the stairs carefully, testing each step. The banister was loose, and more than one board creaked ominously under my weight. The second-floor hallway stretched ahead of me like a tunnel, doors hanging open on either side. Room 237 was at the far end. I found Selah standing by the window, silhouetted against the dim light filtering through the boards. She'd changed clothes since I'd seen her at the bar. Now she wore jeans and a dark sweater, practical clothes that suggested she was planning something physical. Dramatic choice of venue, I said, keeping my distance. I wanted somewhere private, somewhere we could talk without an audience. Talk about what? She turned to face me, and in the flashlight beam I could see that she'd been crying. Her makeup was smeared, and her eyes were red and puffy. Quote 165. Quote 166. Quote 167. I studied her face, looking for the lie. With Selah, there was always a lie. Quote 168. Yeah, quote 169. In one, the quote 170. She laughed bitterly. Quote 171. The quote 172. I repeated. I'd honed the quote 173. Selah's expression shifted just slightly. There, that was the tell I'd been waiting for. Grigwin, quote 154, the quote 175, and at a quote 76. But I could hear the lie in her voice, and suddenly the pieces started falling into place. Ray's strange behavior at the party, the way she'd handed me the USB drive, her constant filming of everything that happened. Quote 177, I said slowly. Quote 178. Selah's face crumpled. You don't understand. It's complicated. Explain it to me. Ray is making a documentary about infidelity, about how affairs destroy marriages. She needed subjects, real people, real situations. And you volunteered? Not exactly. Selah sank down onto a dust-covered chair. She found out about Evan months ago, said she'd keep it quiet if I let her film the aftermath, document the whole process. I felt a cold rage building in my chest. So this was all planned? The party, the video, everything? Not planned. Exactly, but orchestrated. Ray knew you'd find out eventually. She just made sure it happened in a way she could capture on camera. And you went along with it. What choice did I have? If she'd exposed me months ago, you could have told me the truth, my voice echoed through the empty room. Selah flinched as if I'd struck her. Quote 190, she whispered. Quote 191. Quote 192. Quote 193. Quote 194. I heard footsteps in the hallway outside. Multiple sets, moving carefully but not quietly enough. I turned toward the door, my hand moving instinctively to my phone. Quote 195. Selah's face was pale in the flashlight beam. Dean, I'm sorry. I tried to talk them out of it, but... The door burst open, and Evan stepped into the room flanked by two other men I didn't recognize. They were all young, all athletic, and all carrying themselves like they thought they were about to star in an action movie. Quote 197. Evan said, his confidence apparently restored. Quote 198. I kept my expression neutral, but my mind was racing. 3 against 1, in an isolated location, with no witnesses except Selah. This was exactly the kind of situation that ended with someone getting seriously hurt. Quote 199, I said calmly. Quote 200. Quote 201. One of Evan's friends said, he was shorter than the others but built like a wrestler. You've been harassing our friend here, threatening his future. That's not cool. I offered him a business proposition. He was free to decline. Evan laughed. You think you're so smart, don't you? The clever contractor who outsmarted the lawyer and the college boy. But you made one mistake. What's that? You assumed we'd just roll over and take it. He pulled something from his pocket, a phone with the camera app open and recording. Here's what's going to happen, Evan continued. You're going to delete every photo, every video, every piece of evidence you have about Selah and me. Then you're going to post a public apology admitting that you made everything up because you're a jealous, controlling husband who couldn't handle his wife's independence. And if I refuse? The wrestler stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. Then we'll have to convince you. I looked at Selah, who was pressed back against the window, her face a mask of terror. This was your plan? Get me alone so your boyfriend and his friends could beat a confession out of me. No, she said quickly. Dean, I swear I didn't know they were coming. Evan said he just wanted to talk. Shut up, Selah, Evan snapped. You've done enough talking. That's when I realized that Selah wasn't part of this plan. She was another victim. Evan had used her to lure me here, but he hadn't told her about the muscle he was bringing, which meant I had an ally, even if she didn't realize it yet. You know what, Evan? I said, pulling out my phone. You're absolutely right. I should delete everything. I opened the photo gallery and started swiping through images, making a show of selecting them for deletion. But what I was really doing was opening the emergency app I'd installed months ago. A panic button that would send my location and a distress signal to Rusty, Letitia, and 3 other contacts. Quote 218. Evan said, moving closer. Hey now, quote 219. Yeah, quote 220. I said, looking up at him. The quote 221. His confident smile faltered. And quote 222. Like your quote 223. Quote 224. I shrugged. Quote 225. The wrestler was getting impatient. Quote 226. That's when the lights came on. Not electric lights. The building had been without power for years. But flashlight beams, lots of them, streaming through the windows and doorway. I heard voices in the hallway, familiar voices. Police, everyone stay where you are. Evan's face went white. Quote 228. Quote 209. I told him calmly. Quote 230. The next few minutes were chaos. Rusty burst through the door with 2 actual police officers behind him. Evan and his friends tried to run but found their way blocked. In the confusion, Selah pressed herself against the wall, sobbing. Quote 231. Rusty grabbed my arm. Quote 222 and quote 233. One of the cops, a young officer named Martinez, was already reading Evan his rights. The other was securing the scene, taking statements, confiscating phones. As they led Evan away in handcuffs, he turned back to me with pure hatred in his eyes. Quote 234. He snarled. Quote 235. I said. Quote 236. The street festival was in full swing when I made my final move. Main Street was packed with families, college students, and tourists, all enjoying the late summer weather and local vendors. A small stage had been set up in front of the courthouse for live music and community announcements. Perfect. I'd spent the week since the hotel incident preparing for this moment. Evan was facing charges for attempted assault and conspiracy, which had effectively ended his graduate career. Selah was on administrative leave from her law firm pending a full investigation. Her friends had scattered like leaves in a hurricane, each trying to distance themselves from the scandal. But I wasn't done yet. I found Letitia working the Anchor's beer booth and pulled her aside. You ready for this? She grinned. Been ready all week. You sure you want to go nuclear? It's time to end this properly. The open mic session started at 3 p.m. I watched from the crowd as various community members took the stage. The mayor talking about upcoming infrastructure projects, the high school principal promoting the fall sports season, a local business owner thanking volunteers. When my turn came, I walked up to the microphone with a folder full of documents and a wireless microphone headset I'd borrowed from the sound tech. Quote 240. A murmur ran through the crowd. I could see Selah near the back, flanked by Mira and Jules. Her face was pale, but she was trapped, in too many people between her and the exits. Quote 241. I continued. Quote 242. I opened the folder and pulled out the first document, a timeline I'd created showing the progression of Selah's affair with Evan. Quote 243. The crowd was completely silent now, hanging on every word. Quote 244. I pulled out Mrs. Harker's photographs and held them up so the crowd could see. These photos document dozens of meetings between my fiancé and Mr. Crawl over the past 2 months. Coffee shops, restaurants, his apartment building, all while she was planning our wedding, choosing flowers, sending out invitations. Someone in the crowd shouted, "What a witch!" Others nodded in agreement. But wait, I said, raising my hand. It gets better, because this entire situation was being orchestrated by someone else, someone who saw an opportunity to profit from our pain. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the sound system. I want you to hear something. This is a recording of my fiancée explaining how one of her closest friends manipulated the entire situation for a documentary project. Selah's voice filled the air, crystal clear through the festival speakers. Quote 250. The crowd erupted. I could see people pulling out their phones, recording everything. Social media was about to explode. Quote 251. I continued when the noise died down. Quote 242. I paused for effect, scanning the crowd until I found Selah's horrified face. Now, some of you might be wondering why I'm sharing this publicly instead of handling it privately. That's a fair question. The answer is simple, because they didn't give me a choice. I pulled out the final document, a police report from the hotel incident. When I tried to handle this quietly, they escalated to threats and attempted violence. When I tried to protect my reputation, they launched a campaign to paint me as the villain. They forced this into the public arena, so the public deserves to know the truth. The crowd was completely on my side now. I could see people nodding, hear voices of support and encouragement. I'm not asking for sympathy, I said. I'm asking for accountability. We live in a community built on trust, honesty, and mutual respect. When people violate that trust, when they lie, cheat, and manipulate others for their own gain, there have to be consequences. I folded up my documents and stepped back from the microphone. That's all I have to say. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the festival. The applause was thunderous. As I walked off the stage, people reached out to shake my hand, pat my back, offer words of support. I felt like a conquering hero returning from battle. But the real victory came a few minutes later when I saw Selah trying to push through the crowd toward the parking area. People stepped aside for her, but not in a respectful way, more like they were avoiding contamination. I caught up with her just as she reached her car. Selah. She turned, and I was shocked by how much she'd aged in the past week. Her face was gaunt, her eyes hollow, her usually perfect hair hanging limp around her shoulders. Quote, 249. She asked quietly. Quote, 260. I said. Quote, 261. I pulled a manila envelope from my jacket and handed it to her. Quote, 262. She took the envelope with trembling hands. Quote, 263. Quote, 264. Quote. I looked at her for a long moment, this woman I'd once planned to spend my life with. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no regret. Just a vast, empty relief. You'll figure it out, I said. You always do. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing alone in the parking lot with the divorce papers in her hands and the sound of the festival continuing without her. As I headed back toward Main Street, my phone buzzed with notifications. Text messages, social media mentions, friend requests from people I barely knew. The story was spreading beyond our little town, picked up by local news outlets and gossip blogs. Selah had wanted to be famous. Now she was. I found Rusty and Letitia at the beer booth, both grinning like they'd won the lottery. Quote, 268. Letitia said, quote, 249. Quote, 270. Rusty asked. I looked back toward the parking lot where Selah's car was pulling away with a squeal of tires. Yeah, I said. It's over. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't entirely true. The legal proceedings would take months. There would be paperwork, court dates, probably more attempts by Selah to salvage her reputation. But the important part, the part where I took control of my own story and refused to be a victim, that was done. I'd faced down the cheating wife, the predatory lover, and the manipulative friend. I'd exposed their schemes, protected my reputation, and come out stronger on the other side. Some trips aren't worth taking, especially the ones you plan with liars, but the journey back to self-respect, that one's always worth the effort. The festival continued around me, full of honest people living honest lives, and for the first time in months, I felt like I belonged among them again.